Welcome to Just Got Played. This is JJ Jim Jam, and I'm here today to teach you how to play Power Rangers the deck building game. Here we go. Power Rangers the deck builder game is a 2 to 4 player game, team-based deck building. One person or two people play. One team plays as the Rangers, and the other team plays as the Masters and the Monsters. Rita Repulsa and Lord Zed and all them. The basics from the original TV show in the core set. Each player is going to, first of all, decide whether they want to be a Ranger or they want to be a Monster, Master, whichever. And then you're going to go team versus team. If you're a one-person team, you're a one-person team. And then each team member is going to choose a character that they want to be. The basic rule set is if it's 1 versus 1, the basic rules are, say, for your first game, choose Jason Scott Lee and Rita Repulsa as your first time playing. Obviously, the leader of the team and the leader of the Monsters. Just makes sense. The Rangers are going to actually each person is going to choose their character, and then you're going to get the corresponding signature weapon that goes with your character. The Rangers, as you know, they all have a signature weapon, and then the Masters usually have a weapon with them. Not all the time, but yeah, in general cases. Obviously, if you have Rita, you're going to go with her staff. And then Jason Scott Lee is going to get his power sword, as per the show. The Rangers start on the teenager side, and the Masters start on their scheming side. Over the course of the game, as you attach cards to your character, you have 4 slots to fill up, and then once you fill up the 4 slots, the Rangers get to Ranger up, and the Masters get to empower. Kind of a interesting thing. I guess it's like, make my monster grow, all that then. The Ranger side has a starting deck that includes a power coin, a recovery, and an attitude, as well as 1 copy of those 3 cards, and then 7 copies of teamwork. The Masters have a similar makeup, kind of, sort of. They have putty clay, rebuild, and disposable, as well as 1 copy of each of those, as well as 7 copies of mayhem. The cards have a different name, but they pretty much work the same. The power coin or putty clay gives you 3 energy. Recovery and rebuild gives you health. Generally, it's 1 health, or if you have 20 or fewer HP, you get 2 instead. And then the attitude for the Rangers, teenagers with attitude, and disposable. Every time you battle an adversary, you get to destroy up to 2 cards you control. Control is defined as any cards that are in play, any monsters or Zords that you have in play, and any cards that are attached to your character are all in play. Anything in your hand, discard pile, or deck is not in play. So that's good destroy potential. Not many deck builders, for the veterans that know anything about deck builders, usually have a destroy card in your original starting deck, which makes this unique. Power Rangers deck builder unique. Because you already have a destroy card. So it's good and bad. If you don't battle an adversary, you kind of miss out on that effect. And if you destroy too many cards before you get enough cards into your deck build scheme, deck building, then you could hurt yourself by not having enough cards. I made that mistake very early on. I only had 5 cards in my deck with not enough buying power. Speaking of buying power, that brings us to the crystals, which are 7 copies of teamwork or mayhem. For the Masters, gives you 1 crystal each. Crystals are your buying power in order to buy cards out of the grid. So once you have all your cards set up, your character, your signature weapons, and your Zords or Masters, that is your signature weapons. You only get 1 for your character, and that's it for the game. The other ones can be put back in the box. Your Zords or Masters come in a deck. You get to play potentially all of the Zords and all of the Masters. You do have to make a deck with the Zords or Masters. Put your corresponding Zord or Master on top of the deck. That is the first one you can buy. But you can only buy 1 per turn. But on every following turn, you can flip up a new Zord or Master and buy those later. So at some point, you're gonna have a team as the Rangers, you're going to have those Zords. You're going to want to form the Megazord. As the bad guys, the villains, the Masters, you're going to want to have a team of other Masters in your lair. The Zords go into the Zord Bay, and the monsters go into the lair. Basically, it's just a way for you to know what is face up and in play during your turn and available to be activated. The Zords have a one-time use ability that you can play during your turn. The default Zord Bay, you can only activate one Zord per turn. You have to pay the energy cost if there is one for the Zord. But you can only activate one per turn, and they are the only cards that are in play that do not ready on their own during your turn. But there is an ability on the Zord Bay to energy cost you pay, and you can activate, or you can ready all the Zords in the Zord Bay, even though you can only activate one in the beginning of Zord Bay. The Masters monsters have it a little bit easier because they have usually at the start of your turn ability that goes off. So anytime you pay for that Master and put it into the lair, they have a one turn per at the start of the turn ability that you get to use for free, which is kind of BS. So yeah, just in note here, if you want to hear my opinions, please comment in the comments below and join our Discord. Let me know if you want to. I can do rankings on the characters. You'll get full of my opinions. We can argue and everything and all like that, or agree on some things in the Discord or in the comments below. So yeah, click the link. And then a stack of stun and a stack of blade blasters. The rulebook says to have the stack of stun face up, and then the blade blasters have the top one face up and the rest of the deck face down. I don't understand because they're all the same. Blade blasters, not like they're different. That's kind of weird. Also, you have the grid, which I mentioned earlier. The grid is your buy area. As you know, veteran players know, with deck builders, there's always like a buy market that you have, and in Power Rangers, the deck building game is called the grid, obviously. At the start of the game, you want to put out 6 cards. If you have any cards that have more than 2 copies in them, it is in the rulebook states to put the card at the bottom of the main deck and draw another one. You can only have a maximum of 2 copies of every type of card in the starting grid row. So I guess it gives everybody a fair chance. You don't want to have too many villains or too many heroes out there to make it uneven for each team. Other than that, you put out 6 and then you're ready to start the game. By default, villains go first. I guess it's thematically because if the villains don't show up, then what are the Rangers going to fight? So that's how that goes. So villains start first on any game. If you're playing one-on-one, that's pretty simple. If you're playing on any kind of team-based 2-on-2 or 1 versus 2, the villains still start first, but they alternate. So you're always going to go villain, ranger. No matter if you're playing a 1 versus 2 or 2 versus 2 game, you're always going to alternate. They do include little turn-based coins in the game, which kind of make no sense to me because the one has a ranger side and a villain side, but it clearly states in the rulebook the villains always go first in bold. So I don't understand that. Yeah. In Power Rangers, the deck building game, you're going to have a energy and HP marker here that comes with it. One for the villain team, one for the villains, and one for the Rangers. At the top, you're going to start with 0 energy. And then at the bottom, if you're playing 1 versus 1 or 2 versus 2, you're going to start with 30 health. But if you are in a 1 versus 2 scenario, the solo player will start with 15 health because they'll just have more turns in between each player because you're playing it's the one of the people on the 2-person team, and then you're alternating between their turns, so they're going to get double the turns per the amount of people on the other team. After that, you're ready to begin. Villains go first. Then you're going to draw your hand of 5 cards and play your turn. Also to note, if you're playing in the 1 versus 2 scenario, the lone player will also only be drawing 4 cards in their hand instead of the normal 5. And now I'm going to break down for you how the cards work in Power Rangers, the deck building game. First, we're going to talk about the 4 main cards and how they function, and also the anatomy of a card. So the 4 main types of cards that you're going to be playing in Power Rangers, the deck building game, are Equipments, maneuvers, heroes, and villains. There is a fifth type called locations, but they function a little bit differently. So we're going to talk about those after this. The anatomy of a card. Each card, well, most of the cards. Actually, I have seen a couple cards that don't have these, but the basic layout of a card is the cost in the top left, the name of the card, also a little background picture. You might recognize those from the comic books. Nice. And then most cards are going to have an energy cost and crystals or crystals on them. And then they're going to say the type of card they are, and they're going to have a little energy cost ability in most cases. For the equipments and maneuvers, they get attached to your characters, or you can play them for the energy and crystal costs, or to generate energy and crystals. In order to use the ability on the card, the energy ability, you will have to attach that to your character in an available slot if the slot is the same color as the corresponding card. Some characters don't have equipment or maneuver spots, so you can't play those cards if it's not on your character. Just remember that when you're choosing your character. Heroes and villain cards can only attach by that hero or villain. So to say that heroes can only attach hero cards onto that character, and villains can only attach villain cards onto that character. But what happens is with heroes and villains, if you are a ranger and there are villains in the grid, you will have to battle them to get them out of the grid because you cannot buy them. The way you battle a adversary in the grid, if you're a hero, you battle villains. You have to pay the energy cost on the bottom, and then you get the reward that is after that. Same with the villains. If you see heroes in the grid, you will have to pay the energy cost, the crystal cost, in order to fight it, and you get the following reward. Everything else on the card can be ignored. There are special abilities that give you that let you gain the adversary card. But it's very specific, so we're not going to go over that here unless you come up, usually it's a villain ability or a character ability that does it. There are some cards that once you battle them, you get to acquire a card and break the general rules. The card will go into your discard pile and you'll draw it like normal, but you cannot use it. Since you can't attach the card, you won't be able to use the effect ability on the card, but you can generate the crystal and the energy off of the card. Of course, there are some abilities that break those rules, so these are in general. So, as mentioned before, locations work a little bit differently in Power Rangers, the deck building game. They have the same buy cost, the same title, and then a picture in the background, and also their type. But they do have an ongoing ability that activates usually once per turn, by whoever character owns it. But they also when you gain them, when you gain a card, usually you would put it in your discard pile, but locations actually get put into play as soon as you gain them. If they're ever removed from your play area during your turn, they go in your discard pile, and then once you draw them back up, you can play them again. Next, we have stun cards and blade blasters. Blade blasters go face up in a stack next to the grid, as well as stuns. They have their own separate deck. Blade blasters work also like the equipment, maneuver, villain, and hero cards, where you can buy them. They have a type of basic, and they go into your discard pile. When you actually draw them, this is the part that's a little bit different, is you don't have to attach them to use their ability. Anything that has it, like with other starters that don't have an energy cost, you don't need to attach them to use the effect on the card. They will generate the 2 crystals for buying, and then they also have their ability text that activates during your turn as well if you wanted to. They have a cost at the top, and then the only thing with blade blasters is you can only buy one once per turn. So if you want to do a setup where you have the top card of the blade blaster deck face up and the other one's face down, you can do that. Just remember, you only get to buy one per turn. Blade blasters have an ability at the end of your turn. You can either do 1 damage to your opponent, or you can remove a card from the grid. But they do go back to their stack once you destroy the card. So there's always a infinite supply of blade blasters available, unless they're all in somebody's deck, which is kind of weird, or players' decks. Stuns are acquired usually due to being attacked or defending. They have an ability, if you heal 2+ during your turn, you can put the stack back into its stack. When they are gained, unfortunately, they go into your discard pile, and then you can draw them up and then use their ability. They have no other benefit except for your opponent clogging up your deck. So try to get rid of them as soon as you can. And now we're going to talk about character card anatomy. What we have here is we have our leader, Jason Scott Lee, and Rita Repulsa. Both of them are on their depowered side, teenager side, scheming side, non-ranger, non-empowered side. Kind of strange how they did that part, but the teenagers make sense. You have teenager, ranger. But the villains have a scheming and an empowered side. I can see what they were trying to do there. Usually you have like, make my monster grow, but Rita is just a bad bee the whole time. So as you see here, you have the names at the top of the cards. Then a title that tells you what side you're on. You always start with the teenager side or the scheming side, depending on what team you're on. Then it has a little ability in here. When all 4 slots on the ranger card or teenager card is filled and you flip over, you get your Zord for free. You don't have to pay for it. And then the villains have their ability. It's you draw a card and flip this over. Not like uneventful, kind of say, because you do get to draw a card and then you get flip over. You get a better ability on the other side, but it's okay. I guess they kind of balance that out because the master cards don't have a cost to pay for their starter turn ability, so they kind of even it out that way. That's pretty cool, I guess. So underneath that, you have the ability. It's usually an ongoing ability or a triggered ability that you can use during your turn. Usually has a one-time trigger, depending probably how powerful it is. In Jason's case, he has when you play or attach a hero, deal 1 damage. So that is play or attach because that's 2 different things. But basically, if you have a hero in your hand, you get to just hit the other team for 1 damage. So you're either playing the hero for its energy and or crystal cost, or you're attaching it to your hero attaching it to your character so you can use its ability on the card. So that's pretty good, but it only has 2 slots. So usually the villain side is going to be trying to kill off the heroes because that's a pretty good ability because you get to use it every time, but it's usually going to go off like once or twice a turn at most. So I can see why there's no limit to it. Compared to Rita, which is the first time you attach a character during each of your turns, attack, deal 1 damage to target foe for each empty slot on their character. Hers hits a little bit harder, especially at the beginning of the game, or if you manage to unattach cards from the other team's character. But it is only 1-time attachability, not even play like Jason is. And I chose these characters because it's suggested in the rulebook that these are 2 starting characters you want to play if you're doing a one-on-one situation. So that's pretty much it for the front of the card. As you can see, they have different colors requirements for cards that you can attach to that character. For Jason, it's 2 heroes, an equipment, and a maneuver. And then for Rita, it's a maneuver, 2 villains, and then pretty much any color. What's different about the villain card is, as you can see here, attach Rita Repulsa when gained. Once you pay for a master card or acquire it a different way, it actually gets attached to the bottom slot on the character card. If you have a card there, then it's going to get replaced because it's orange color. Orange usually denotes, or it's like multicolored, means you can attach anything to that slot. But it will get recovered. It has to get replaced, or it has to get replaced by the corresponding master card. So that's a little bit different between the heroes and the villains. But like I said, they usually have an ongoing ability. And then at that point, once you fill all the slots up, as you can see, the heroes can only attach heroes and the villains can only attach villains. You can't really, switch over in general. But once all slots are filled over, then you're going to flip the card over, and then you're on the ranger side if you're a ranger or were a teenager, and then you're on the empowered side if you were a scheming villain. The slots do not change color, so that's pretty much the same. The name change on the Ranger, Mighty Morphin Red, obviously, because now he's a Ranger. But here in the middle, you get a negative, or you get a discount on activating cards. So once we go into the card anatomy, you'll see that activating abilities on cards that are attached to your character has an energy cost. So on both sides, with the Rangers and the villains, you do get a discount on activating those cards. You get an energy discount. Now, the empowered or Ranger side has a different character ability. Usually it's going to cost you some energy. You don't get a discount on that, but you do get to use the ability, and they usually are stronger once per turn. In Mighty Morphin Red Ranger's case, attack, deal 3 damage for each hero attached to your character. So again, he's still sticking with the heroes. So you're going to get 6 damage. You have the 2 heroes on your character, attached to your character. Rita is attack, deal 1 damage to target foe for each empty slot on their character. So now instead of a triggered ability, you actually have to, well, triggered when she attaches something. You actually have to pay for it this time. So it's kind of not as good. I honestly don't flip Rita when I play her, just because the other ability is better because you get it for free instead of having to pay 3 attack for it. That's another thing as far as strategy is concerned. You don't have to fill up all the slots if you don't want to. And then once you do flip over to the other side, if for some reason you lose one of your attached cards, you have less than the full slot attached in whatever, you still stay on the Ranger or empowered side. You never flip back. Just a little note from the rules. Keep in mind. And then finally, we have the crux of the Power Rangers deck building game, that is the signature weapons and the Zords or Masters. Each character starts with a signature weapon that they can only buy, and each team will have either Zords or a Masters in a deck that their team can only buy. Rangers have it nice because once you attach cards to all 4 of your slots, you can flip over your Ranger or flip over to your Ranger side, and you get your Zord for free. Whereas if you don't use that free one-time use, you have to pay for it. Masters don't get that benefit. They get to draw a card when they flip into their empowered side. But then after they buy their corresponding master, they can buy the rest of the masters that are available from the master deck. In order to use the abilities on the cards, you will need to attach them to your character. Once all 4 slots are filled up on your character, you can then flip over to your Ranger side if you're playing the Rangers. At that point, you get to attach your Zord to the Zord Bay, which we'll talk about it after this. In order to use the ability on your cards, you will need to spend the energy cost on that ability and also tap the card, indicating that it's been used for the turn. You can only use energy abilities on all cards, even including your character, only once per turn. At the start of your turn, you will get to ready the cards attached to your character for free. Zords, you will have to pay the cost. Master cards have an ongoing ability. Also, as you can see, once you flip over to your Ranger side or your empowered side, you get a -2 energy discount when activating abilities attached to your Ranger. Your Ranger or Master will usually have an ability on either side. Usually on the Ranger side or the empowered side, there will be an energy cost. Remember, you don't get a discount on energy costs. It's only on attached cards. Also, one small note, there are cards with the hand signal on them. They will be on block cards. If it has a palm on it, that means it can be played from your hand. These are the only type of cards that can be played from your hand and not attached for their ability on them. On blocks, it's because when you get attacked, you can block. You can also attach it to your character, so that way you always have it available. So if it's not in your hand and you need to block an attack, you have it there. Most of the time, it's going to make you discard it after you block. But if it is in your hand, you still have to pay the energy cost. If you're not on if your character is on its Ranger or empowered side, then you would have to pay the full energy cost, and you won't get that discount if it's in your hand. Just remember that. All right. In Power Rangers, the deck building game, at the start of your turn, first thing you're going to do is do a little cleanup. You're going to refill the grid if there is not 6 cards in there. Cards were bought or confronted or attacked. And then you're going to flip top card of your Zord or Master deck. If the top card is not flipped over, you flip over and show the new Zord or master. It is in this case the tiger sword, but yellow saber-tooth tiger. And that way you can buy it on your next turn. And then you're going to ready any attached cards that you have on your character. If they were tapped in the last turn, you can ready them. That way you can activate their ability again or swap. And then if you have any start of the turn effects, that's usually going to be on the villain side. Most of the masters all have start of the turn effect on them, so you get to use those without having to tap them or pay an energy cost. Pretty nice. And then that's when you'll start the main phase. During the main phase, you can play cards, which is taking cards out of your hand and playing them into your play area for the effect and the crystal and or energy that is on the card. The effects on the cards will be triggered as soon as you play the card. Your crystals and your energy can be used anytime during your turn. So your crystals will be on the cards. Your energy will go onto your energy meter. And then once you trigger the effects of the cards that you have just played, you can at that point move on to another action during your turn. You can also attach cards that are available on your character. In this case, Jason, you can play 2 heroes, an equipment, and a maneuver. Usually it's going to be heroes for the rangers, and villains can be attached for the villains or the master. So attaching card is not the same as playing a card. It's a choice. You can't do both. So you either use the ability on the card. Usually it's going to be a starter where you can play it out of your hand and use the ability on the card. Every other card that you buy out of the grid, you will have to attach it first in order to use their ability. The only exception is block cards that have the little stop hand symbol on them. Those can be played out of your hand to block an attack from your opponent or opponents. Everything else, you have to attach it to your character, almost everything else, I should say, in order to use the effect on the card. And then you can also buy cards with your corresponding crystals. The value of the cards in the top left in order to buy it. Most cards, once they're bought, they go into your discard pile. The only thing that does not get tapped or needs to be attached to play or goes to your discard pile when you buy them are locations. Locations actually go into play in front of you, not attached to your character, and those effects usually trigger once per your turn. They don't all have triggering effects, and they all don't have continuous effects, passive effects, I should say. But yeah, you just read the card. But the important thing is to note is they go out in front of you unattached to your character as soon as you buy them. And then if for some reason it gets removed, it goes into your discard pile. And then once you draw it, put it back out in front of you and play it once again. One thing that's unique for the Power Rangers deck building game is the attack or battle. You can attack cards in the grid as long as they are an adversary to you, to your character. For example, I have a ranger. I can attack villains. And instead of looking at the top buy value or the buy cost, I will look at the bottom and look at their battle ability or battle cost and their bonus. In this case, if I battle this putty patroller, it costs 2 crystals, and then I would heal 2 on my health. And then that would go into the grid discard pile or main deck. Main deck discard pile, but it's still in the game technically. Because there are effects that trigger in the main deck discard pile. If a card says to destroy, that's the only time you remove it from the game. If it is not a stun or a blade blaster, they get put back on the top of the deck. Their corresponding deck. And then you can activate abilities on your character. As I was saying before, most other cards besides starters need to be attached to a character in order to activate their ability. At that point, you would just pay the energy costs next to the ability and then tap the card, indicating that you use that ability. Most have attacks on them where you end up attacking your opponent. Some have blocks where you can block attacks. You can block for your teammate if you have one, if you wanted to. So most blocks have a discard this card. Attacks, you attack, you tap it, and then at the beginning of your next turn, you can untap it. And then you can also discard cards that are unused. So if I have a card that I did not use during my turn, I can then at that point just swap it out for another card, another legal card, I should say. In most cases, colors have to match up. But if you have your signature weapon, if you're a villain, you have your master. Those cards can go in any slot because they are multicolored. So that's how that would go. And then after you do all your actions, you don't have to do all of them. You can just, not even play the cards if you want to. Just skip your turn. At the end phase is where you do end. First, you do end of the phase abilities. It's very rare, but there are some. And then you take damage for any of your adversaries that you don't have. Rangers would take damage from villains, and then the villains would take damage from hero card. You just take 1 point of damage for each different adversary that you have in the grid. And then you have an optional discard. So whether a card is tapped or not on your hero, at that point at the end phase, you can actually just discard it. So put it into your discard pile. Not remove it from the game. It still goes into your discard pile. So when you draw it, you can choose to play it or attach it again. But yeah, that's a way to free up slots if you end up buying better cards towards the end of the game. Well, anytime during the game if you're lucky. And then at that point, you discard all the cards that you played during your turn, and then you draw up to your hand limit, which is 5. I don't think there's anything. I have not seen anything that increases your hand limit so far. But yeah, that's when you discard your hand, and you draw back up to 5, and then it's the next team start.
And I hope you enjoyed that. That was JJ Jim Jam here from Just Got Played, teaching you how to play Power Rangers, the deck building game by Renegade Game Studios. Hopefully you catch us next time. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff below. Please comment, let me know how you think. Tell me your dislikes, your likes about Power Rangers and deck builders all in general. Come check us out on Discord and on Twitter and Instagram and all the things. Come comment. I like it. Give me a little discussion. Other than that, we'll catch you next time. It Just Got Played. Bye.